So I am very conflicted on this new Dragon Age game. One, because this isn't the same BioWare team. We've seen a lot of coverage from games media the last couple weeks saying that, BioWare is possibly back. The next big thing is here. The next big RPG, just like Baldur's Gate last year. But the problem is, we don't know what to expect out of this BioWare team. The OG BioWare is long gone. We're going to talk more about this, but all the developers, all the directors, all the lead individuals behind these franchises, Dragon Age Origins, the original Mass Effect trilogy, they are long gone. So expectations of, saying that this is going to be Mass Effect 2 or Dragon Age Origins quality, I just don't trust that, especially with what we've seen so far, which doesn't seem like a lot. Now, the head-scratching, questionable nature of this new Dragon Age installment, this is something that goes way back, and I think a lot farther than some may realize. Long-term fans of this channel might remember this, but most of you probably not. But Dragon Age 4 narrative director says all art is politics. This was in regards to some of the controversy surrounding this game 6 years ago, when development was still in its early days. And this Dragon Age director, who, again, he is the director, he said, a few people telling me after seeing my Twitter profile not to bring politics in the game. Dragon Age has always been about belonging. Okay, about realizing that family is more than blood and about celebrating our diversity and differences, it will remain so. That is not what I thought about Dragon Age, but he deleted these tweets years ago. But it's important to understand where all this started and why I am extremely nervous about this entry. And then some other tweets, he said, ultimately, though all art is politics, it's just a hell of a lot easier to ignore it when those politics match up with yours. We have finite time on this world. I want to spend mine making it a better and more caring place. So this is how he feels about Dragon Age. He wants it to be, I guess, a representation of our world. So I think this is why early on so many people were concerned, and why I still am to this day, and also not necessarily trusting the review coverage we're going to get from Access Media. But yeah, this is the conversation that has been surrounding EA BioWare the last number of years. It's just controversy after controversy after controversy. And it's important to remember that Dragon Age The Veilguard, which was called Dreadwolf, and then before that it was just referred to as Dragon Age 4, it's been in development for at least 9 years. And it started out as a multiplayer live service, and then it changed to, well, what it is now, an action RPG of sorts. So it's been through quite the tumultuous development. It's also lost many key individuals that were part of those early games. But here we are indeed. Dragon Age The Veilguard has gone gold. The game is officially going to be launching in 2 weeks, our first BioWare experience in 6 or so years. Now, in terms of anticipation surrounding this game, there just isn't a whole ton right now. On SteamDB, we have the most wishlisted upcoming Steam games, and you would kind of expect a major franchise like Dragon Age to be somewhere around the top 10 position, but it's nowhere to be found right now. It's actually all the way down here at number 27, number 35 in top sellers right now. And again, all of this really hinges on review scores from critics. If it's positive, I'm sure that's going to shoot up. Will it meet the 10+ million sales that Dragon Age Inquisition sold? I have my doubts right now. And it is worth mentioning that Dragon Age Inquisition was a massive success for BioWare back in the day. Mark Darrow, who was an executive producer on Dragon Age, revealed that it had sold over 12 million copies. So a big sales success. It was their most successful game in history, and then, well, since then it's just been disappointment after disappointment. Andromeda's sales fell short. We have no actual exact data, but there seems to be indication that it sold less than 5 million sales, which is really shocking for, Mass Effect as a franchise. And at the time, it was a massive thing we were all talking about. And the fact that EA canceled all of its DLCs because they just wanted BioWare to move on from that. And then there were certainly some excuses for why the game failed. We had one developer saying the lack of diversity was the reason why it failed. No, the game was just a technical mess and everybody was mocking it. And it certainly was impacted by other releases. We'll get to that in a second. And then we have BioWare's Anthem, which was supposed to be their big live service, supposed to last 10 years. It was compared to Destiny and a bunch of other MMOs and such, and it flew under 5 million overall copies. They wanted to do a 2.0, but that was canceled. All concentration was put to the next Dragon Age game. And again, here we are. And the first impressions for this title were as negative as they could get, with what a lot of people referred to as a trailer that was cheesy and goofy. And look, first impressions matter, and BioWare came out of the gate with probably the absolute worst thing that you could do, a terrible trailer. But I will admit, the footage and the gameplay that we have seen since then has been a lot better. I do think the combat, what they're going for, which is very different than the earlier entries, looks fine. It looks very comparable to a lot of the action RPGs we see nowadays. I've seen people saying it looks like God of War, and I suppose God of War Light, I guess. And then, look, the choices, the consequences, that's going to be a big thing. And then the overall writing, and at this point, I just don't know what to expect out of this BioWare writing team, because a lot of what this company was is gone. And a great example of this is all of the departures. And I don't think people understand it. It's been a couple of years since we talked about this, but this list of departures is absolutely insane. They've lost hundreds, and I mean hundreds of senior staff, from the development of Mass Effect Andromeda, which turned a lot of developers off and wanted to leave that studio. Then there was Anthem. A lot of people didn't want to work on a multiplayer live service, so they left. And then the years since, a lot more developers have left this studio and moved on to other careers at other game studios. So this company has been in a free fall for a while now, and this is one reason why I do not like referring to BioWare nowadays as the same studio that made those beloved games all those years ago and really fueled the 2000s with RPGs. And just some of the notable examples: Archetype Entertainment, they're working on, I think it's called Exodus. It looks like a very interesting spiritual successor to Mass Effect. James Olin's the VP, Chad Robertson's the VP, and a lot of the key figures on those earlier beloved BioWare entries are now at this studio. And then another handful of individuals were at Aspire Media working on the KOTOR remake until they weren't. And then even more individuals, including the GM Aaron Flynn, have been at Improbable Entertainment working on, I'm not sure exactly, but there was a number of developers at BioWare that went to that studio. And even in the last year or two, we've seen, again, more and more massive departures. One of the BioWare veteran writers, Jay Watmaniak, he left after 20 years. This was in the mid of 2023. There was also news that Mass Effect writer Mac Walters left BioWare at the beginning of 2023. And then there was the layoffs. This was a massive story at the time, but towards the end of 2023, EA conducted a number of mass layoffs, and that included over 50 BioWare developers, including veteran writer Mary Kirby and technical director John Renish, and a couple of other writers that were in the credits of Mass Effect 1 and 2 and Dragon Age Origins. And I think among those games, there's only like 1 or 2 writers from those games left. All of the staff, all the key individuals are long gone. So again, just another reason why this BioWare ain't the old BioWare. And we have also seen that this was another controversy. Ex-Dragon Age devs sued BioWare over denying full severance. So that was a messy, messy situation when that happened. And look, this is the conversation that has been surrounding Dragon Age The Veilguard from Access Media, and it is quite positive. After 6 hours, it's a definite Game of the Year contender. Another outlet saying, BioWare's back, baby. They are not. It's not the same BioWare. And then we had Polygon. The Veilguard's press preview gave me the reassurance I was looking for. And then we had Eurogamer. Feels like the series is Mass Effect 2 moment. Another outlet, MMORPG. BioWare's latest has Game of the Year written all over it. PC Games Endo was a little bit more negative, saying the Veilguard just isn't it. This was somebody who was very comfortable with the franchise, saying that they didn't like how BioWare was changing the formula, changing exploration, changing combat. And that seems to be the sentiment that I've seen from a lot of players that are veterans of this franchise, that love this franchise, saying that the way that BioWare is changing it seems to be aimed at more casual audiences, and they just don't like the changes. But we'll have to see, you know. I'll wait until I actually get my hands on a controller and play this for myself. But I've never been a huge Dragon Age fan post Dragon Age Origins. I think the franchise really started to fall flat after that. So I do have to say, though, the coverage surrounding this game has been rather interesting. What I mean by that is you have the conversation online, which is very hostile. It's very everywhere. A lot of controversy in regards to certain aspects of the game. The first impressions were quite negative, and then some of the design choices that they made have also been quite controversial. And then you have games media. I guess a great example of this would be The Gamer. Dragon Age The Veilguard is the perfect Halloween game. It almost feels like some of these outlets have already made up their mind about this game, and I feel like some of that has to do with the politics of BioWare nowadays. But yeah, this is their coverage of it. It's just constant positive articles, and that's fine. I just find it very weird when you look at other games of this magnitude, and they get a very different reception from an outlet like The Gamer because their politics don't align with them. And you see this from many other outlets, but I'm just choosing The Gamer as a prime example of this. And here's Hogwarts Legacy. probably the biggest RPG, well, one of the biggest of 2022, and yeah, gamers are pretty spineless for not agreeing with their political position. And yeah, all of it is just negative articles, and they even refused to review the game. But the one out, and they also said, let's talk about bullying people for playing Hogwarts Legacy. Jesus, this is what I mean by, I don't think people can trust outlets like this for their scores and the review coverage. Many of these individuals go all over the industry, from Kotaku to IGN. This isn't like they just stick with one outlet. All their politics, they all agree. They're all California individuals, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just shows a problem with games media and the fact that diverse voices is pretty much shunned. And that's why there has been a total revolt in recent years against stuff like this, and why many individuals look to content creators like myself for coverage. But yeah, one outlet that did cover Hogwarts Legacy, there is no magic in the game, and they gave it a 1 out of 10. So this is just an example of why I don't trust reviews a lot of the time, and why I actually look into the reviews for actual substance. It's one reason why I don't really like to give review scores myself. But I will say this article was really eye-opening from Northeastern Global News. Dragon Age The Veilguard represents everything wrong with the games industry, just not for the reasons you might expect. And they go on to say, the game has become very representative of the turmoil of the industry, says Fogzaro, an assistant teaching professor of game design at Northeastern University and the long-term fan of the franchise. The story behind the game's troubled development, executive staff turnover, multiple significant shifts in creative vision, prolonging development, layoffs, even a name change, is a checklist of the worst parts of a big-budget AAA game development. And yeah, like I said, the development of this game has been chaotic, to say at the very least. 9 years, they had to have spent well over $200 million, but a mass exodus of former developers, former senior leadership that made the studio what they are, and just controversy after controversy with them. If it's struggling, if it's received very, very poorly, my only hope is that it's seen as a symptom of the industry and not, it turns out there was no BioWare magic. I mean, there wasn't, that's flawed in of it itself, but I think a lot of people are quite tired of the AAA spear, yet there are not a lot of openings for that to change. They go on to say, in a sea of free-to-play, microtransaction-driven multiplayer games that keep players engaged for years, The Veilguard is an odd duck that goes doubly for EA, which is known for the Madden games and multiplayer shooter series, Battlefield along with FIFA or whatever it's called nowadays. Dragon Age doesn't fit the formula for typical live service games or a games as a service product. They make really wonderful RPGs where most people are concerned about who it is they can kiss and which mage is going to betray them. If The Veilguard is not the bloated corpse of everything EA wants and manages to hit with players, this individual says, it would be a much needed win for the Dragon Age series and BioWare as a whole, but with EA eyeing its bottom line, if The Veilguard fails commercially or with fans, it could also be the final nail in the coffin for BioWare. And this is the concern with BioWare these days. I've been saying this for a while now. BioWare has not had a hit game in over 10 years. Dragon Age Inquisition was their last hit, and even then, the reception surrounding that game has turned, I feel like, a little bit more negative over the years. But Anthem, Mass Effect, Andromeda, they were horrendous. The developments of those games were well-documented disasters, and here we are with Dragon Age The Veilguard, which has had just as disastrous of a development so far, but impressions do seem to be so far pretty positive about this game. But if it does not translate to sales, I definitely think that Electronic Arts might be finally ready to give BioWare the axe and shut down this studio. There's only so long you can continue to fail, and this is what this developer has been for the last decade. So look, the conversation surrounding this game has to get a lot more positive in the coming weeks, and that has to be positive review scores, and there can't be a lot of controversy, because if that drowns out the conversation, it's going to kill all the hype that could come out from positive review scores. Baldur's Gate 3, the reason why it was such a juggernaut was because of the fact that word of mouth went around. People are saying, look, there's this awesome new RPG about, and that continued to go. And it also redefined a lot of things that this industry has been doing. And I think there was almost a revolt against a lot of the mediocrity of this industry. And I don't know if BioWare has that talent anymore to do more than what, well, the Baldur's Gate 3 team did, which was something that was the old standard and really what we used to get from this BioWare studio back around 2010, 2011, 2012. But once the doctors left that studio, a lot has changed. And then we saw so much tumultuous chaos. Now, we did see Dragon Age veteran Mark Dar predicting the Veilguard review scores, so they have high expectations. He's been consulting working at the studio for the last couple of years. I don't believe he works there, but right now he says that he believes that the game will get an 88% is his prediction, before adding that his prediction is within 5% of the number above or below. So he thinks somewhere between 83 to 93, which would be quite positive. BioWare hasn't landed there in a very long time, and it was noted here by the gamer that Dragon Age Origins has a score of 86, Dragon Age 2 had a score of 79, Inquisition a score of 85. Myself, I think it's going to be the high 70s, at least based on everything I've seen so far. But then again, outlets like these individuals probably going to give it 10 out of 10 no matter what, if we're being honest. But it is worth mentioning that Mark Dara also gave his prediction back in 2018 or such, or he was talking about review scores for Mass Effect Andromeda. I think it's relevant since he's talking review scores in which he thought that the game was actually a 90 for Mass Effect Andromeda, which yeah, he said that in a different window, a 72 could turn into a 90. He blamed the failure of Mass Effect Andromeda pretty much on Horizon Zero Dawn and Zelda Breath of the Wild releasing right next to it, which is insane because Mass Effect Andromeda very much earned that 72 review score from Metacritic. And all this reads to me is just a ton of excuses. But yeah, some of the other things that we have learned about the Veilguard recently, only 3 decisions from Inquisition will be carrying over. Little disappointing for those who actually, you know, care about these RPGs. And I mean, Mass Effect was known for all of those choices carrying over. So seeing this, very disappointing in my opinion, but it has been a decade, I suppose. And then we did even see Mark Dara of BioWare talking about Baldur's Gate 3's success and what it meant for the Dragon Age team. He specifically had to say this. He said, yeah, I didn't really feel that earthquake in terms of people being worried about it. I think what I really saw last year more than anything was a renaissance in the RPG genre. Last year was arguably the strongest year we've seen in terms of RPGs. Not only did we have Baldur's Gate 3, we also had Hogwarts, we also had Starfield. Okay, we had tons of RPGs coming out last year that covered a really wide swath of what an RPG can be. Although, let's be honest, the one that everybody was talking about, the one that earned those Game of the Year awards was Baldur's Gate 3 by a mile. I think it silenced some of the naysayers. It didn't cause a massive shift in the way that the Veilguard was being deployed, but I think it made some people who maybe were thinking, well, we should really be making action games because action games sell 10 million copies and RPGs sell 6, and silence those voices. Although, it's important to understand what Baldur's Gate 3 represented. It was bringing back an old standard that BioWare themselves pretty much established towards the end of the beginning of the 2010s. So I think there's lessons to be learned here, and I don't know if BioWare is actually going to learn those lessons. Choices, consequences, tons of cutscenes, tons of content. That's what Baldur's Gate 3 represented. Hogwarts Legacy, that was pretty much bringing a childhood dream to the screen for gamers to play. Everybody wanted a Harry Potter open world RPG, and Hogwarts Legacy was that. Starfield was another Bethesda RPG, had its problems and stuff. We don't need to get into that in this video. But BioWare has also been defending a lot of the decisions and problems with the game. BioWare veteran defends Dragon Age The Veilguard's character creator, since it's just about role-playing. Some of the criticism has been, why is there so much concentration on character creators? This isn't specifically in terms of the options that are provided, but a BioWare developer said, hi, game designer here. I'm seeing the metrics. While it's not just you, there's a sizable number of players who spend huge amounts of time in character creation. Some will spend more than an hour there. Also, in a dialogue-heavy game with a lot of NPCs like Dragon Age or Baldur's Gate 3, you need a wide wealth of options to create a world of options to make your NPCs not feel like pod people, copies of each other. That said, another large percentage will just slam the default or preset options, especially in a slider-heavy CC screens where finding a good look is almost an art. Having good presets is crucial for those players who just want to get into the game. And yes, many people will try to make themselves, and many people are delighted that they can. As a side note, white men usually don't understand the value and power of representation in games or movies or comics or TV because they've always had plenty of it. Seeing someone like you hits a lot harder if you're a woman or black or gay or have vitiligo. The tendency to try to make yourselves also results in generic white guys being chosen, but that's mostly a function of white guys being the largest demographic for gaming, even though that is changing as gaming becomes more widespread and international. Okay there, BioWare, okay. And then he continues saying, last but not least, if you don't like certain character creation options, one great thing you can try is not choosing them, and that's his direct response to those upset about the surgery scars that are, I guess, in the character creator, which I don't think any other game has ever done that, which is, like I said, that came out of the middle of nowhere, in my opinion. I did not expect to see that. And to be fair, a functioning, expansive character creator to this level wasn't exactly expected, in my opinion. Especially with what we got last time with Inquisition. And then he did respond again about that specific situation, seeing blah 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 his thoughts on the subject. People turning this into a culture war thing are basically just telling on themselves, all for the option that is utterly skippable. Now, in terms of learning from their past, we did see Dragon Age's director talk about learning lessons from Anthem. He said to know what you're good at and then double down on it. Pretty much he said that BioWare made a mistake going with a live service multiplayer because they didn't have expertise in that, and they shouldn't have done that, and they should have just concentrated on what they do best, which is open world action RPGs. But the problem is that we have not seen this company do any good writing in a very, very long time, in my opinion. They also haven't made a BioWare experience really in a long, long time. Mass Effect Andromeda released, what, 7, 8, 9 years ago? We're a studio that has always been built around digging deep on storytelling and role-playing. I'm proud of a lot of things on Anthem. I was on that project for a year and a half, but at the end of the day, we were building a game focused on something we were not necessarily as proficient at, and yet they released it, and the writing of that game was horrendous. So you can be proud of Anthem, but there was so many mistakes made with that game. Not necessarily just with the direction, but the writing, the lore, it really was blasphemous compared to what that earlier team of BioWare was producing in the mid-2000s. We've already been talking about some of the controversies surrounding this game, but one of the big things is the design of these Kunari. Yeah, it looks horrible, and PC Gamer thankfully called it out in this article, which they pointed out the fact that EA, I don't know what this design is. It looks very Fortnite-ish. It looks way too friendly, I guess. It just doesn't look right, in my opinion, especially when you have characters like this. It just, like I said, the design of these characters and everything that they've made with this game, there's a lot of question marks. There's also the head proportions. We talked about this in a separate video, but the head proportions for this game is truly insane. I don't know what the heck happened at BioWare, why everybody's head's so fucking big, but it is. And BioWare, for what it's worth, did defend the Kunari designs. A developer said comparisons like this have been floating around, so to clarify, the one on the left is a custom character, but there's many other individuals that look just like this, created by the player. The choice to make them look like that is intentionally made by the player. It's not an NPC. The Aeroshock was also a very specific model, but there's more examples that look just like that, and this is just coping and pretty much gaslighting players, in my opinion. And we've kind of gotten that for years with these developers, and Epler, the game director of this new Dragon Age, has been consistent with his insane remarks. He, in 2020, claimed that the disappointment with Mass Effect 3 and Dragon Age 2 was the proto-GG. Yes, he linked it to GG, because everything is because of that. Oh my god. And then one of the former lead writers on Dragon Age, just recently actually, in regards to the criticism that the game is woke, put that in quotes, he said those individuals, those making those critics, are effing tourists. And David Gator, who was a lead writer on some of those early Dragon Age and BioWare games, said if they gave up on BioWare a decade ago or more, for those whom say Origins was the last good game, arguably was, then they never were going to buy the game anyhow, at which point, why should BioWare listen to them? Abandon your fanbase and woo us instead? Okay, sure, Jan. Gator in recent days, though, has taken this up a notch on Blue Sky's social media, along with a couple of other former and current BioWare writers openly mocking the criticism that they've received with new and old Dragon Age games. Mary Kirby saying the mantra of the BioWare fan is, the game about to come out is garbage, why didn't you make it exactly like the last game, which was perfect? Repeat this every game launch until the heat death of the universe. Another writer saying, rage baiters are suddenly in love with Dragon Age 2 and I'm going to get off my lawn. Some of us were here first, but it's true though. The new thing will always suck completely and totally. And Gator himself has also attacked the perspective of those criticizing the Veilguard of the females aren't hot enough by saying that that's obviously incel behavior, and yeah, he's taken it much further with these featured posts. I will say though, interesting timing. If you're looking to support your former colleagues at BioWare, probably the worst way you could do it. So yeah, that is the conversation surrounding Dragon Age The Veilguard. And look, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think the gameplay looks very fine. The exploration looks decent. The storytelling, who knows how it's going to be, I don't know the writing. And the choices and consequences, I very doubt they're going to be on the level of Baldur's Gate 3. I really do hope that this is an experience that is worth it, but there are so many red flags, not even necessarily in regards to the controversies, but the game's development has been absolutely insane, and this BioWare team is very much unproven. proven. So in about 2 weeks, we'll get an idea if this Dragon Age is truly Game of the Year, or if it's just another sign and that BioWare is finally coming to a close and Electronic Arts might be ready to shut its doors. Again, we'll find out very soon. But anyway, how are you feeling about Dragon Age The Veilguard? Are you planning to play it or not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.